Today we're going to spend a little time going over some of the pluses and minuses of the Code of Arbitration. Code of Arbitration. When we think about arbitration, we're talking about dispute resolution. We've got a conflict, a dispute, we need it resolved. One of the options obviously is litigation. This can be costly, it can be time consuming, it can stretch on and on and on because of appeals, things like this. So arbitration can provide dispute resolution that is both cost effective and time effective, but people have to be willing to abide by it. So we're going to go over just some of the things related to arbitration, talk about how they're pluses and how they're minuses, how they try to ensure an even-handedness to it, that sort of thing, that there's equal representation, it's not biased towards one side or the other. And we're going to go through those things briefly now. So when we talk about the Code of Arbitration, we want to begin by saying it's a panel that is put together in order to hear disputed cases. So you've got a dispute between two parties, perhaps between two firms, two groups, maybe in-house dispute, whatever it is. There's a dispute that has come up, and a panel then is appointed to hear this dispute. Now the reason for a panel is it's easier to have a group of people hear a case, to be fair and even-handed sometimes, than it is for one person. One person to be truly neutral is almost impossible, if not entirely impossible. We all have our own points of view. We all have ideas, prejudices, ways of seeing things. It's intrinsic to who we are. So to be truly neutral is next to impossible. Whereas if you have a panel, you distribute then or broaden the different views that can be brought in and brought to bear and play on that kind of situation. And so the upside then is that there's a panel appointed to hear the dispute. Not every panel is perfect. Sometimes there can be a party politics brought in and it can be deadlocked, whereas you'd kind of like one person just to say this is the way it's going to be. So there are always pluses and minuses when we think about this. One person may not be neutral, but they make a decision, it's done. A panel may not be able to come to a decision. But with a panel, you at least get to distribute or spread the amount of viewpoints brought to play on that. So a panel then hears the disputed cases. Next, decisions of this panel cannot be appealed. Now, some people may think that's a downside. What if I feel like I get a raw deal from the panel? Well, the upside to this is once the panel decides, it's done. It's resolved. The dispute is over. And there's a great deal to be said for finality and resolution. So arbitration does introduce finality and resolution because it cannot be appealed. Now, if you get a raw deal or you don't like the result, nothing else you can do. You can't appeal it. Whereas if it had gone to litigation, you can obviously appeal a decision and take it on from there. So arbitration has the upside of finality and resolution. The downside, you can't appeal. 3, it is far less costly than litigation. Far less costly in man hours, time, money. All of that is much less expensive in arbitration over litigation. Now, some people say, well, I don't mind how much it costs. I just want to make sure I get the right result. But for most of us, the amount of time invested and the amount of money invested, this option being so cost effective and less expensive is very helpful and would therefore be seen as an upside to this. And then 4, the panel is to be made up of a distribution of public and private members and insiders and outsiders. This basically is just making explicit what I talked about up here underneath 1. When you make up the panel, you want to get people who are both public people, private people, insiders, and outsiders, bringing all those viewpoints so that everything can be heard. You're going to get a fair hearing in there somehow or other because someone, either public or private, a disinterested third party, an insider, and an outsider all get to place their input, get to be heard, and have a final say and vote in deciding the case, which once again cannot be appealed. So with this, you have a better chance at getting a good verdict, or at least a dispassionate one that's not motivated by party spirit. If it was only an insider, he's going to side with those on the inside against those outside. If it's only an outsider, you have the opposite problem. And if it's a public person, they have certain interests, private person, certain interests. So basically with this Code of Arbitration, you get a panel of a diverse group, less costly than litigation. The decision cannot be appealed, so you get resolution and finality. And it's a panel then that hears the disputed cases. This is the basics of the Code of Arbitration. There's more that can be said, but just wanted to hit the high points today.